Namaste and welcome, beloved mighty companions. How blessed we are to be together, that Jesus has given us, that he's brought together this constellation of beings devoted. And I love what Muji says, this is a hot fire. It'll burn, but it'll only burn what you're not. The question is, will we stand into it with him and stand into whatever's arising to see what's beyond the moving? To see that everything he promises about supreme happiness is true, that we do not know our best interests. That's so clear to me. And he's saying, yes, as long as we do, as long as there's a play in consciousness where we think, where we don't, not joining is the death. It's a symbol of not joining with our Father, of pretending we can dream of not being with our Father. So how do you know you're following the ego? You won't want to join. Consciousness plays to pick up all its toys. I'm going. I'm going. I'm getting out of here. It won't join. That's the play. It won't look directly, just see what's true. Do you sometimes you'll be called to be stepping out of the world. You'll see that it won't be working. But boy, we don't see where it's not working. That's what Jesus is showing me so clearly. How much we don't see our best interest. And how he's really the only one who can see that. And that the only way is following him. So you'll question it. I'd like to say unquestioning. That it becomes more for the experience here, more and more unquestioned. Because you see that would be, he's reminding me, when we question him, we're questioning our identity. We're questioning who we are. See that the infinite light of being, it's not questioning. It doesn't say, does the infinite light of being say, okay, what am I doing next? It's so great to see a contrast. Love just is love. And to admit, how unfamiliar territory that is. Love for no reason. The forgotten country. The forgotten world of infinite. The choice to have a memory other than infinite. Each passing day, like the admission, even deeper. Holy smokes. That's the admission, that's the freedom. To finally admit that the God way is the only way. That's freedom. What we've been fighting for does not exist. You can ask them. So what I'm fighting to keep doesn't exist. So we're fighting to keep the impossible dream. The impossible dream. An unbeatable foe, because there's no foe. This is my quest, a quest. But Jesus can turn a quest into a quest for holiness. That's what this book is. It's the quest for holiness, so that all the focus in a consciousness to turn the journey, instead of a journey to discover consciousness and play in consciousness and more about consciousness and how consciousness works, to go, what am I really? Like the most fundamental, like I wanted to be a scientist, and I can remember thinking, I can hear the I in it, but it's innocence. If I could just figure it out, if I could just figure out how things worked and how bugs moved and how, like, I love marine biology. And if I could just study these little animals, and it was fascinating. You put a little crab in a chamber and then you measure how much it breathes in and out, how much oxygen it uses. Because I loved crabs, little crabs. Had a little pet crab in the lab. Like Jesus doesn't say no to any of that. And there it was yesterday in the movie, taking samples in Antarctica, taking samples in Alaska, up in Alaska, taking samples of seawater in Alaska. It's beautiful. Just a reminder. He's bringing back that memory and reusing it, like retranslating it to stretch beyond. There's a stretch assignment, but we don't see that at the time to go up to Alaska. And spend 3 months at a marine lab in Alaska. He uses everything, to stretch outside of the idea we think that we have of ourselves. So nothing's unused by the Spirit. It's just when we think that something's taken away by love, if we look, that gain, he's saying, yes, that gain, that if we look, that it'll be sacrifice or terrible, or we've done something wrong, or it's just a play in wanting a timeline. He's showing me how much that timeline is wanted. Until we admit how much it's really wanted to be a timeline and just give up that ghost. It's a ghost. It's a ghost story. It's a ghost story. Jesus, yeah, is that a ghost story? We can all hear it. That's a ghost story. That's a ghost town. It's a haunted house. We're living in a haunted house. Jumping every time something bangs, and then pretending that the poltergeist is something outside. We're the poltergeist. We're the whole shooting match. Oh my gosh, it's so humbling. The bombs, those explosions here. Do you remember what they're for? I know there's some fundamental reason these things go off all the time. Here, they're like one of these big things that you send up and it makes a big bang. It's some kind of holy thing. You see that interpretive function, but just notice that twitch, that playing consciousness to twitch as though something real is outside. And not only does it twitch, then it spins, it spins. It's a spinning, zing, into the story of what's happening and isn't it bad? And I wish they would quit. Oh, that was a big play. I wish they'd quit that. What's wrong with them? All the beliefs. That's what's so helpful. If you believe something about someone, just write those beliefs down and look at them, because you'll see those are the beliefs you hold about yourself. We hold about ourselves. That's why journaling can be helpful and reinterpreted by Spirit, because we can see those beliefs. If you ever write an email, just go back and read it and see how many beliefs were in there about the world and what's true and what the story. I can just remember that, you'd write to customer service and I'd zing that baby off. And it'd be like the whole story about everything to try to explain everything and how I'm right and how they're wrong. And it's the desire to stay in the dream. How they are wrong. Oh my God, that's dead. The theys and then thems and the who did it's and it's like, Jesus, can we just drop that? He said, yes. See that it can't happen. So you can see that love is just all that's here is innocence. But the play of consciousness, just it doesn't want to look that deeply. It's going to run from deep looking. You have to really want God above all else. That's what I see here. To be so true for God and his kingdom and just say no to all of that noise and the kerfuffles and see how the light's not involved in any of that. And as Renee says, a number of times we need to be reminded, Legion. But that's happiness. Because then the consciousness starts to look inward to go, there's something here that's really not working. That's what we have to admit. I see that. We have to admit it really doesn't work. We're so, like the play of consciousness is so determined, again, exactly like Jesus said. What can we say? We have to admit he's right again. I have to admit he's right again. The desire to be right over happy. We want to insist, that quote about truth. We're upset about the truth. That the truth, only the truth is truth, and we're the truth, and we're upset about that. That's what consciousness is made for. Be upset that it can't have both. It can't be fragmented. Ask Jesus, is that the argument? The argument, it likes to play in fragments, the arguments with fragments in there. Here's a better fragment than this fragment. It's comparing fragments. The dream compares fragments. Just ask Jesus, is memory ever complete memory? It's impossible. Memory is a fragment. Okay. Then we'll argue. He's reminded me we talked a little bit about that yesterday, how, you're sitting on a beach with someone and then you talk about that memory. And then it's an argument over the memory. No, this happened first and this happened. And you just feel yourself getting really, I can remember that, getting really mad over a memory. They're not remembering it right. See, that they were in the they already. Because we believe salvation is in the fragment of the memory. See, that's why it fights. It fights to keep the fragmentation experience. It wants to be right about fragmentation. It's possibly be a fragment rather than whole and complete right here, right now. Another day, another argument with the Holy One. Just until we see. It sometimes has to get so bad. I don't know. There's no explanation for it. But it can pop you out too, just pop you out of the whole game. Just say, I'm done with that. I'm done with all of it. He says that's helpful to really mean it though, because it's sort of like, okay, I'm really done and I'm really going to look for a little while. And then it's like, this is really hard. Got to even be more determined than that, because that's part of the play, to make it seem difficult. So just hold each other's hands and hold each other's, hands, and just go, we're going in. And you see the power of standing together in holiness. It's indescribable what's happened with this group of mighties that have come because we're the demonstration for each other. That God's word, that Jesus keeps his word. That's what we're here for. To be Jesus, actually. All the Jesuses. They've been hearing Jesus for a really long time. Now to move beyond that uncertainty that we're hearing, and that the doubt, because the doubt that we can hear him is part of the play. It's just part of the play that about identity. It's part of the play. And then we can just relax and accept his assignments as he gives them. Because the only assignment he's giving is to see we're love right now. Infinite happiness. As you know, my favorite hashtag is supreme happiness. It's all of our favorite hashtags. And we've got to really be with him on the conversion of the favorite hashtag, because we don't even know that our favorite hashtag is I=hell. We have to ask him, okay, let's admit it. Jesus, this is my favorite hashtag, in truth, below my level of awareness. It's just an admission. I=hell. And we can laugh with them. But that's the retranslation that he's promising, this infinite love is promising. It's the retranslation of the desire for a hashtag I=hell into the recognition that hell does not exist. Only hashtag supreme happiness exists. And within the play, the consciousness supreme happiness is not known. You can ask Jesus. In the dream, can I know it's supreme happiness? No. Not one inkling, not one clue, no. It can't be known in the dream. The dream is made to perpetuate itself as though it's real. By pretending that love can be infinite, happiness can be found on another day in a future. And he's showing us directly now that we have all the power granted by the Father and always have had it. That's what the acceptance of stepping into the assignment is. It's acceptance of divine power as granted by God. And to be unwilling to accept anything other than that. That's what it is. Divine power is supreme happiness. Is saying no to the concept of a person. And be guided so gently with him. Okay, I still want it, Jesus. Okay, let me show you. And then look at him and, okay, whatever it takes. It does, he's saying, yes, it has to get to whatever it takes. That's how small consciousness wants to play in those teeny tiny itty bitty fragments. To play itty bitty fragment. And even play like it's following Jesus. To use The whole Course in Miracles to preserve a sense of personal identity. He says yes. To use that entire text to hang on to a personal identity. That's why he says you have to throw it out at some point. If you get the lesson, you don't need the book anyway. He says, if you really get what I've shown you, you'll see that his only point of that is that this lives within. This great love lives within us. It is us. And that what he's offering can never be understood in the dream. It's impossible. It has to be recognized. And he's reminding me about, at first, there's a lot of purification, as he says. The ego doesn't take that so well because it doesn't want to be pure. It doesn't. No. You can ask him, Jesus. No. It's okay. He still loves us. But you have to stand into that purification and really trust him. Trust the walk with him and trust your brother deeply, deeply, deeply. Because it's really the faith, as he said, the trust always points back to infinite. It's trusting that we're more than that little paper tiger that just came up. And the willingness to be wrong about everything and be shown wrong about wrong 100,000 times, maybe even. That's what it seemed like here. Maybe for other beings. And Lisa would say that, maybe I've already gone through this, so you don't have to. That's what Jesus is saying. We don't have to, but somehow. I don't know, but then you see it's all fine, you know. You see it's all. He says, just come with me and laugh. So here's you go, lesson 13. Jesus, thank you for another pointing. You see, when you look at this course, that he just goes full on out of the gate. This world is meaningless. We'll start there. He's saying it'd be a lot easier if you started there, that the world's meaningless. The assumption is that the world has meaning. Yes, he says, yes. That's the assumption. He says, that's a faulty assumption. Let's ask him, Jesus, is it a faulty assumption that the world has meaning? That's the accident, the accidental tourist. We made an accidental tourist. We're accidental tourists. Geez, are we accidental tourists in what cannot happen? Thankfully, it can happen. Boy, I wanted to escape this world. I can't even, it's kind of getting to be a dim memory, though. That's really good. Because the ego makes it, and then I got to escape. I got to get away from it. I want it all to go away. It's really, it can be really like fascinating if you just notice how consciousness plays to deceive itself without anything happening. And you laugh, like Muji says, sometimes I just want to go in the bathroom and laugh because we can't see it, you know, and it is funny. It's really funny. Not to laugh at anyone, just to laugh at the play. Because it's taken so seriously. Like I said, my baby pictures at 2. I got to find those because just the seriousness at 2 years old, sitting on the back of a car. This is not good. This is not good at all. And again, that feeling like always wanting to escape the world so that we don't see that it's a miscreation. And then the play is that there's a way to escape it. And then the ego pops up. He's saying, yes, the ego pops up with the idea that death is the escape. And you'll see that pop up. I just want to kill myself. If I can just kill myself, I'm done. That's the play. No, you won't be done. It's really great. You know, I don't know what Jesus directed me. You never know what he's going to, it's like he blows out every idea about everything. Had me look at the Egyptian Book of the Dead. Now, if that's not a book demonstrating that consciousness continues after seemingly the body transitions, it's a whole story about consciousness continuing after the body drops. It goes with us. Because I don't know if I told this story, it's pretty funny. I can remember thinking, well, I don't remember any of my past lives. So what? I'll just come back and I won't remember this time. And that's exactly until we see. I remember thinking that, you know, well, screw all of them. I don't know who they were. I'll just, and that's the play, you know, I'll just come back and pretend like we can forget all that and take another round to hell around the block. A meaningless world engenders fear. He's going right in, a meaningless world. So he's already telling us, you can just see the pattern. See, because I didn't want to see it. Obviously, the eye didn't want to see it. But you can see how he starts out. I give everything, all the meaning it has for me. Therefore, and when it's meaningless, there's fear. So we can see directly where he starts out, who's giving all the meaning. And therefore, that means if we're in fear, we've given something meaning it does not have. Then he goes, a meaningless world. So that every fear has story behind it. You can ask him, Jesus, does every fear of every experience, yes, have a story? See, it has a story in there underneath the level of awareness. And it's really not to look. And I remember him talking to Helen, and he's reminding me of that right now, how they were talking about phobias. And he was talking about how there's always something deeper under a phobia. It's not just, and you can see it. We actually, I asked, and yes, it's the same. It's a phobia of God. It's not, it seems like a phobia of a rat or a phobia of it's a play in consciousness. All fear is giving something a meaning it doesn't have. It's giving a spider a meaning. It's giving a rat a meaning. It's cemeteries. Leaving our house gives leaving our house a meaning. Doesn't have. Gives traveling somewhere a meaning. Gives our brother a meaning. You just feel that tightness, like I was talking about when I was in Jerusalem. I could just feel it, you know. I could feel the prompt to go somewhere and have to catch a cab, and really, you know, and how many times I got to say no to that and go, okay, I'm going. But really, until he'd show me that, because I had traveled a lot all over the United States and the world, and I guess it's really, he's saying, yes, until we've really started looking with him, like we go through the course, like all the terror through the meaning is so far below the level of awareness. It's the deep dreaming is so deep. And then it gets closer and closer to the surface, and all of a sudden you're like, you bawled for no reason. You don't even know why, because it's just a release. It's just easily pops out. We just pop out of it. But where it's so pushed down, the desire to have the experience is so pushed down. So the ego is going to interpret that. Why? It's not getting better. No, it's purging. We're purging out. The beingness can't hold on to that conceptual experience anymore. So it's you just start to notice it. Like I said, I would travel and I'd see, like, it almost jump when there would be one thought that my passport wouldn't be there. You know, it'd be, you know, just be a desired experience to But then I couldn't see, we can't see that desire, because it's so buried, and we just get busy. We just get busy and involved in everything. We can't see those places where there's a desired experience. Where fear, there's some story about fear, a meaningless world engenders fear. So then the ego gives it meaning. And to try to keep safe from it, goes hunting. See, safe from really looking, it's going to hunt. And it's masquerades in so many diversity in consciousness, the masquerade of it. To hide it from ourselves, where really what fear is. Anything, as he says in the book, is anything other than infinite love is fear. Anything other than infinite love means that we've given a meaning to something. The tiniest twitch means there's a meaning under there that's not there. The iceberg of meaning. Desire for experience is a big iceberg under there, under that twitch. So I was just asking him, the tiniest twitch is fear. Yes, we can ask him. Ask him, is the tiniest twitch fear? Today's idea is really another form of the preceding one, except that it is more specific as to the emotion aroused. Actually, a meaningless world is impossible. Oh, let's ask him that. Jesus, is a meaningless world impossible? Do I really need your interpretation on everything? It just gets so happy, that interpretation. He says the only interpretation is love. So what we're fighting him for is to keep all the interpretations of the world. We're duking it out to keep meaningless interpretation. He says, yes. Jesus, am I duking it out with you to keep meaningless interpretations? Sometimes. Okay, show me where. That's the only answer, really. Actually, a meaningless world is impossible. Nothing without meaning exists. However, it does not follow that you will not think you perceive something that has no meaning. I'm going to read that sentence again. However, it does not follow that you will not think you perceive something that has no meaning. On the contrary, you will be particularly likely to think you do perceive it. That's it. We insist it. That's it, isn't it? We insist that perception is real. We insist on what we perceive as real. That's why his interpretation is so helpful. It's beyond perception. When he's speaking, it's coming beyond perception. He says, yes, it's coming from wholeness. It's seeing the whole picture in the totality rather than through the fragment of a perception. Perception is made to fragment, asked Jesus, yes, until it's seen as whole perception and wholeness. Recognition of meaninglessness arouses intense anxiety in all the separated ones, yes. It represents a situation in which God and the ego challenge each other as to whose meaning is to be written in the empty space that meaninglessness provides. I'm asking him, that's the descent into hell, isn't it? And he goes, yep. The ego rushes in frantically to establish its own ideas. They are fearful that the void may otherwise be used to demonstrate its own impotence, its impotence and unreality. And on this alone, it is correct. To fill in that space, to fill the void in with being right. The only thing we're fighting for is to keep an idea of who we think we are. As he says, we're fighting for nothing, for meaninglessness is what we're fighting for. We don't want to see that we've chosen meaninglessness over God, giving things meaning. So we have to recognize the meaningless nature. That we can't give a meaning to things that they don't have. That the meaning is meaningless. That's the admission. That's what happens when we go to look. That's what he's pointing to. I'm asking him, yes. That's why you start to get, it's like really anxiety. Recognition of meaninglessness arouses intense anxiety because of that desire to hold on to meaning. He says, yes. So then it becomes a challenge to try to keep that meaning in place. You can ask Jesus, is that the whole gig of the ego? Is to try to keep meaning in place, a meaning that can't be there. It's vastly without meaning. So we're just fighting to keep an idea we have of ourselves every day with Jesus if we don't look. And just to see in the light of divine being, a fight can't even happen. So it has to be within. It's the war within. It is essential, therefore, that you learn to recognize the meaningless and accept it without fear. Wow, Jesus. Wow. It is essential, therefore, that you learn to recognize the meaningless. And then you see how precious that is. Jesus, do we have the power to recognize meaninglessness and accept it without fear? And that answer is immediate. Yes. That's love. Just stand into it and see if it can take you over as more powerful than infinite being. That one meaning that's ever appeared in consciousness is more powerful than the light. That's the light test. And just ask them, can I stand into this without fear? And hear the yes. Because we're so used to meaning, and fear requires meaning. If you are fearful, it is certain that you will endow the world with attributes that it does not possess and crowd it with images that do not exist. To the ego, illusions are safety. See, that's its face of innocence, but not true innocence is pure. True innocence has no meaning. Face of innocence is to protect the meaning. To protect that giving the world meaning is face of innocence, and then say, I don't know anything about that. It's to try to get safety out of illusions, which that's what he means about trying to get salvation through illusions. Illusions to the ego, illusions are safety devices that they must be also in you to equate yourself with the ego. It's trying to find safety in the ego. The exercises for today, which should be done about 3 or 4 times for not more than a minute or so at most each time, are to be practiced in a somewhat different way from the preceding ones. Okay. With the eyes closed, repeat today's idea to yourself. Okay. Go back. A meaningless world engenders fear, a meaningless world. And Jesus, I gave it all the meaning, didn't I? Just that's supreme happiness admission. My eyes closed. Okay. With the eyes closed, repeat today's idea to yourself. Meaningless world engenders fear. Then open your eyes and look about you slowly, saying, I'm looking at a meaningless world. I'm looking at a meaningless world. That'll take you infinite. Each one of these will take you to infinity because they all point to infinity. They point to infinite love. That's supreme happiness, is a meaningless world. And not giving anything any meaning. That's when the ego gets mad because it can't give that meaning. It can't take its little staple gun out and give something meaning. Repeat the statement to yourself as you look about. Then close your eyes and conclude with, a meaningless world engenders fear because I think I'm in competition with God. Oh, look at that itch. Jesus, do I have a desire to be in competition with God? He says, whenever you're keeping meaning, you're trying to compete with God. That's very okay. I am looking at a meaningless world. I'm looking at a meaningless world. Repeat this statement to yourself as you look about, then close your eyes and conclude with, a meaningless world engenders fear because I think I'm in competition with God. That's a good question to ask when something comes up. Is this in competition with God? You start saying, oh my God, I'm in competition with God all the time. Every thought believed is competition with God. He's there's either all in or all in, you know. There's just no sideways with Jesus, not one little shred of it. He says, well, because you're holy, whole, and complete. Because you're holiness itself. I would not have you sacrifice your holiness. That's okay, give it to me straight. I'm really ready. You may find it difficult to avoid resistance in one form or another. This is how bad we want resistance. The resistance is not wanting to admit the meaningless. That's great. You know how he's just retranslating everything for us? It's so awesome. Resistance is not wanting to admit that we're giving meaning to something that it doesn't have. Thank you, Jesus. So instead of saying, I feel resistance, I want to keep a meaning I have for something that it doesn't have in the worst possible way, in one form or another, to this concluding statement. Whatever form such resistance may take, remind yourself that you're really afraid of such a thought because of the vengeance of the enemy. Let's look at that. Whatever form such resistance may take, remind yourself that you are really afraid of such a thought because of the vengeance of the enemy. Belief in vengeance, resistance. Really, whenever a resistance, this is a great reminder, okay? Whenever resistance arises, remind yourself that you're really afraid of a thought because of the vengeance of the enemy. You're not expected to believe the statement at this point and will probably dismiss it as preposterous. I'm willing, Jesus, you can show me that full on. Because you see the salvation lies in that. Really looking deeply at what resistance is. It's like a little gem. Note carefully, however, any signs of overt or covert fear which may arise. This is our first attempt at stating an explicit cause and effect relationship of a kind which you're very inexperienced in recognizing. Do not dwell on the concluding statement and try not even to think of it except during the practice periods. This will suffice at present. How gently he leads us in. I'm looking at a meaningless world. A meaningless world engenders fear. Yeah, we're holding on to these things, aren't we? Because we believe there's an enemy, vengeance, that God is vengeful. That's the play in consciousness, to keep meaning, to not look below it, to see that we believe that there's a vengeful God out there. Yeah, he's saying, do not underestimate how much consciousness plays in the currency of fear. And I was asking him, so that's why you're taking us directly to desire. He says, yeah. It's interesting. I was just asking him, I say, so desire is below the level of meaning? Yes. Desire is before meaning. It's before the split, to give meaning, to create experience. It's a desire for the experience. The desire for the experience is the miscreation, then it blooms out as the interpretive function in consciousness, giving meaning. And meaning is belief. And beliefs rise out of desire for an experience. And I think it was Martin was asking me, can we go directly to desire? I know, I can't remember who it was. People. Oh, all these holy sons of God that I have the blessing to join with all day. He says, just get the lesson in it that your brother gives you. And the lesson is that, yes, now the mind is powerful to go directly to desire because we made it up. So he's saying, yeah, just stay with desire for these experiences and let that burn out in the light of truth with me. Thank you, Jesus. Amen. Love you all.